about sanctuary cities? That gets a lot of discussion, and there's been talk about denying federal aid, for example, to cities that have, through policies of their own local laws, become sanctuary cities, which in effect means they don't have to talk to or cooperate with federal immigration officials. Would you support denying aid to sanctuary cities?
Well, you know, I am really not clear in my mind what a sanctuary city is, and I guess there are cities that.
San Francisco is one.
And why do they qualify? What do they do that makes them a sanctuary city? I've actually asked my staff the same.
It's through a policy or it's through a law they pass that says they do not and will not. It limits the extent to which they must cooperate with federal immigration officials. For whatever reason they feel it's beneficial for them to not cooperate, they think perhaps that fosters better relationships with that population within their jurisdiction.
Well,
that makes it very difficult then, and things like the Steinle case in San Francisco happened. The woman was murdered. The undocumented alien had been released from custody multiple times and then ended up murdering someone. Immigration didn't know they had released the person. They were not consulted. San Francisco has a sanctuary policy or law in place, and they were not required. I guess
part of that really I don't understand is how they have the authority to not cooperate.
Good question.
Yeah, I don't understand
That's why some
that.
have proposed.
I mean, I know when I was lieutenant governor and I was a Homeland Security officer in the state, that it was my sworn duty as an officer of the state of Iowa to cooperate with federal officials. So I don't know. I guess part of this I don't understand is why that is not true, and
it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it does not ring exactly right. Now, it's not the fact that this woman was unfortunately murdered by someone who was an undocumented is very sad, but we have people unfortunately murdered by repeat offenders all the time. So
well, I think it's the issue that someone like that should have never been here in the first place. I think is the issue. If you have citizens, committing murders, I mean, that's one thing. But if you have someone that should have never been allowed entry,
well, definitely, if he were released, we would think that the federal authorities would have had that information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Sarah's Law?
No, I'm sorry.
Sarah Root, the Iowa college student who was killed in Omaha earlier this year.
Oh yes, now refresh. I do remember this.
Again, undocumented, released from custody. There's a bill that's been proposed in Congress to, it would essentially require if there is a death or a serious injury to someone caused by an undocumented individual, that federal immigration authorities would be required to be notified, and they would take custody of that individual if a serious injury or a death resulted. But if you're not familiar with it, it's probably not fair to put you on the spot and ask you if you would support that legislation.
Well, it's certainly something I would look at.
I mean, several of the sponsors were Senator Grassley and Senator Ernst and Congressman King, because the case involves an Iowa woman, a 21-year-old college student who was killed. And so they've gotten behind that legislation. I was going to ask you if you supported that legislation, but again, if you're not familiar with the legislation, perhaps that isn't a fair question.